welcome to this week's episode of Tell Me More. We're marching through Advent. There's much to celebrate around here and much to look forward to. And we get into Isaiah and prophecy and Christmas at First Baptist Arlington. It's really good. We're glad you're listening.
Okay, well, here we are. It's Tell Me More time. We're doing it on Monday morning, which
Look at us.
we pretty much have to do. It's what we keep learning.
Yeah. If we can't catch it on a Monday morning, it's a scramble.
Makes it hard.
It's a hard scramble.
But we're doing it. We're here.
Oh.
In the
Happy
podcast
Advent.
booth.
Happy Advent.
We're trucking through Advent, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
It's flying by.
Those candles are getting lit. We're like 3 out of 5. Am I right?
Yeah.
I am so happy with our worship team for who they're picking to
Let's
light
talk about
candles. Just
pretty
seeing
great.
the variety of what family looks like in our church. You've got
Very
like the
different.
multi-generational legacy families.
Yeah, you got the Williams up there last week.
And the
Just their
Hendricksons.
whole
The
clan.
Hendricksons
yeah,
that
before
evening. And then you have Sherry and Bouquet, who are some just incredibly faithful church members who are roommates, and I think are a vision of what we would hope for people who are unmarried to find kind of a family that you make.
Yep. Community.
Godly,
The family of God.
godly, helpful, service-oriented,
I'm biased.
very mature people.
I'm very biased when we talk about Bouquet
I
and
am
Sherry
too.
because they have blessed my family immensely.
Incredible.
So I've seen them up close.
Yeah.
And
Good people.
They just want to follow Jesus.
Yeah. It's been really good.
Yeah.
And then
Advent.
last night,
How about the-
Advent?
Okay,
Sure.
but we're going to go
Yeah.
back and talk about the music at some point.
Yes,
But
we have to.
Yeah.
Let's talk
We
about
have to.
adventure.
Yeah. It
How
was
about,
awesome.
How about last night?
It was great. I told the Christmas story 3 times to a bunch of little preschoolers and
I
children.
love that. We never made it upstairs.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
I just went from registration table to registration table,
Yeah.
but
That's okay.
that's
That
my
was your
role.
job.
I have air quotes. I helped for a bit, which Casey had so many, you and Casey had so many volunteers that I really didn't have anything to
good.
do except prop a door open, which I'm happy to do.
be a
But then
mom.
when my boys came, last year they came, but they didn't know. They just had no clue what was going on. They were like little potatoes.
Yeah.
This year,
Yeah.
they had a blast.
Fun, yeah.
They
I
had a
loved the
blast.
video you took of Ben in the petting zoo.
Ben was at least 4 times in the petting zoo. I can't remember, but he would literally, and he was okay. I'd say we have to say bye-bye to all the animals, and he would leave fine. But then it's like the attention
in
span.
line.
He realized it back in line, and sometimes cutting the line. Apologies to all the families that we cut in front of. The pony rides were a hit. Sam didn't like it. Brian had to carry him as they walked next to the pony. But Jack and
But
Ben.
they had a donkey ride kind of independently of the pony rides out front.
Yeah, the
right?
donkey
they
rides
had,
and
Yeah,
pony
we
rides.
did the pony just a little
Oh,
more structured, little smaller.
okay, not
So
on the
we
carousel.
we did the carousel.
Well, and I think
That
at
was
one
better for
point
us.
we were
Yeah.
down a donkey because one of the donkeys just decided he was done and just laid down.
Okay, but on the donkey's defense, that was a lot to ask of those animals.
Yeah.
Those petting zoo animals are so patient. Like, you've got these little kids just smothering them, yelling at them, pulling their ears, and they were really cool about it all. I felt bad for them, but they did well.
Yeah.
So
for a donkey
the animal
just to
obviously
decide to take a break.
obviously the animals. Yeah, if you're the donkey that's like, you know what, I'm just gonna sit over here for a minute. Like, who among us has not felt that at some point around a bunch of small children? The snowball fight was a hit.
Yeah, it was
and
fun.
and I don't mean to. It was really, really fun. My kids are 2, but I think the church, Casey, the team worked really hard to make it spiritual, to make it meaningful. I think for the kids that are a little bit older that can grasp that, I think it was there. With the live nativity,
Yeah.
with the Christmas story.
That's right.
It's just really good
It
way.
was fun.
And Luke, you really helped us just track people.
Yeah.
Like,
So
who's here and who do we not know and how can we get to know them? And
we had
it's great.
roughly over 500 people, and about a third of those
And I think
were
that's
people
a
we had
low
never seen
estimate.
before.
The 500.
Yeah, that's just what I captured with registration.
Yeah,
so
who
it's not
did.
a perfect number.
It's a
That's
minimum.
great.
Yeah.
So, but roughly a third of the people we'd never seen before.
Yeah, roughly a third of the people, which is great. Which means adventure isn't just the thing; it's the beginning of relationships with people
that's
that
right.
can turn into
Which
more
is
and
great.
more. Really cool.
I met a lot of families.
It just had a good energy to me,
It was a good night.
and it's good exposure.
Really good night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the music of
Okay,
the
yeah, let's
season.
go back
Okay,
to-
yesterday. Oh my!
We
If you
watched-
are a contemporary worship
Yeah,
person,
that's good.
you have to go back and watch the classic service
Yeah.
worship
Yeah.
from yesterday.
Yeah.
You do, and vice versa. I mean, if you're
Yes.
only a
Yeah.
classic, there's some really good
They're
stuff in contemporary.
so
But
good.
particularly yesterday, there were several sweet moments.
It was a nice little octet.
I thought it was awesome. And it's cast with our people from age, 12 to...
Boys to men.
That's it, yeah. I thought it was awesome. 12 to Don Bass, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
You got Carson...
That's right.
Jones.
Carson Jones.
Yeah.
He's probably the youngest up there, all the way up to Don Bass. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's our people.
Diaz's
And
did
then what I think was kind of the showstopper was the Diaz's.
Yeah.
They were great, but they were made... It was made really
So if you don't know them,
by the
they're
whole
new members
orchestra and
to our
choir.
church. They joined in September, a young couple.
Music teachers. I
Both
guess.
of them are elementary school music teachers.
So fun.
Incredible.
Great people. They've been super faithful in our choir since, I think, before they joined.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're faithful.
Have been.
And good on
wow,
good on
can they
Aaron for
sing.
recognizing the talent in the room.
Yeah, very good.
And they got to solo or
So
duet.
good.
I don't know what you call it.
Yeah.
It's the two of them. But you put the choir and the orchestra behind them
Yeah, it was,
in
it
the
was
number.
incredible,
It was
yeah.
just really fun. I really loved it. And we were all, Luke and I were in the Welcome Home Center, which is where we kind of reset as we're volunteering on Sunday mornings. We were watching from there. And when it ended and the sermon bumper started, we all kind of took bets on what you were going to say when you got into the pulpit. Because it was like, you have to say something in response to that.
Yeah,
You can't just.
particularly to that, yeah.
Yeah, particularly. Like, you can't just let that sit. I wouldn't be able to. So I bet wrong. I said you were going to say, how about that? I think that's what I thought you were going to say. Is how about that?
I
Got it right.
was right and knew that you would say,
Wow.
wow.
But you
was
said
it.
all the people said.
I said, wow, that's right.
Or what are we supposed to say?
Yeah.
Wow. I think that's what
it.
you said.
It was powerful.
It was
and
awesome.
then, the contemporary arrangements of some of these Christmas carols have been really, really
They have
good
been
and
so good.
meaningful. Michael and Aaron have just...
It's neat to see the program.
Skilled, faithful leadership from people of super high
Humble.
character.
Yeah, and I think less seasoned or less talented. You'd put all your energy into the program, and then the next Sunday would be,
Yeah.
I don't know, two kids with their
That's right.
guitars or something.
Yeah, that's right.
Instead, they're just
It's a crescendo
throttled.
almost, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's really,
awesome.
really good.
So,
Great people.
Makes us look
Awesome.
forward to
Yeah.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Just so y'all
Christmas
know,
Eve.
Christmas Eve we're experimenting. It's a little bit earlier in the day because of trends and what we've seen with attendance in the past few years. So we have a 1, a 2. Help me. I think I got it wrong already.
1:30.
We start at
1:30,
1:30.
3,
4:30.
4:30.
Thank you. Okay,
There you
let's
go.
say it again so I get it right.
1:30, 3, 4:30.
4:30. They're
Same
all
service.
family friendly.
Same
There's no
service.
child care.
That's
Yeah,
right.
they're identical services.
All candlelit.
Yeah, candlelit. So we'd love to see y'all and bring whomever.
It's a great thing to invite people to.
And people, I mean, even
Meaningful.
people who are nominally Christian might want to come to a Christmas Eve service.
Low bar.
Yeah, even just to see what Christmas is about, or you know, yeah. And we make it. We won't embarrass you if you invite your
It's
friends.
going to be really good.
Yeah.
Looking forward
honor
to
that.
it. Look at us.
Okay.
Advent.
Can
Advent.
Okay, if we're talking about Christmas Eve, can I keep moving? Can I give a
please.
little
Take us into the
advertisement?
new year.
This podcast is actually sponsored by First Baptist Arlington.
First Baptist Church Arlington.
So, yes,
here's
go
what
ahead.
you need to know about what's going on here. We just talked about Christmas Eve. Obviously, we'll have a great Sunday this coming Sunday, no doubt. Then Christmas Eve is Tuesday, and so you've got the ones we just talked about, the 3. And then the next Sunday, the 29, is a little bit scaled back.
Correct.
People are traveling, not everybody's in town, so we will have one 10:30 worship service. We will have childcare for those that normally go to childcare, but no Bible studies, no coffee. The cafe will be closed. It'll just be a simple kind of come as you are 10:30 service. So neither contemporary nor traditional. Be just one expression of one church together. That's the 29. That'll take us into the new year. Happy New Year.
And if you heard any of my sermon Sunday, you'll know the no coffee will not bother me. But anyway,
But
go
it'll
ahead.
bother Cindy. That's
It
what I
will bother
took.
Cindy.
That's what I heard in this sermon.
Bother Cindy, but will not bother me.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
When you get to January, I want
Correct.
to mark on your calendar the 24th through 26 is our church-wide Flourishing Together launch. So Flourishing Together is going to be our theme for the next 3 years.
Correct.
So you can mark the next
going
3
to be
years for
awesome.
that. It's going to be
Seem good.
awesome. We're gearing up. Promise you that. But we're going to get on the same page. We're going to learn about it. So if you're like, I don't know what this is, join the crowd. A lot of us are learning about it. Come on the 24th through 26th because we're going to have some of the leading experts in this global human flourishing study.
That's right.
People who are on staff technically with Baylor and Harvard.
That's right. It's Baylor and Harvard.
They're great people. We've been talking to them, getting them here. So we're having experts come to teach us. So we're still learning about it. But it'll be really, really good. Hopefully it'll be impactful individually for you as you figure out how to flourish in your own life, but also how we flourish as a church and help our community flourish. So I think it's going to be
And
really
you can
great.
find that registration in your church app.
Thank you. Yeah, on the events.
Wow.
Yep.
Look at that.
It's
Look at
free.
that.
It's completely free. It's sponsored by First Baptist Church Arlington. But we do really need you to register so we can just get an idea of who's going to be here. So
It's going to be great.
Love
Don't
it.
miss it.
Okay.
Meanwhile, it's
Don't
almost
miss
Christmas.
Okay. Yesterday was December 15th.
What do I need to
Wow.
know? Today's my mom's
Wow.
birthday.
It's also
Really? Today?
my daughter's birthday.
Today, this
December
very day?
16. Yeah. It's
Look at
Kathy
y'all.
Reed's birthday. Called her this
Okay,
morning.
happy birthday.
Happy
Kathy
Mom.
Reed and
Happy
Evelyn
birthday,
Stehr. Happy
Kathy.
birthday.
Happy birthday, Evelyn. How old is Evelyn today?
Evelyn's 8. I officially have like a big kid, which
8?
is weird.
You, Luke Stehr, have an
Wow.
8-year-old?
I have an 8-year-old.
It's crazy. Time just marches on, doesn't
It
it?
does.
That's exciting.
May or may not have had an existential crisis when I woke up this morning, but you know,
An 8-year-old.
Yeah.
here we are.
Evelyn is a lovely young woman.
She is.
She's a cutie.
She
She's
really
cool.
is.
Evelyn, you're cool. We're proud of you.
She's not listening
Happy
to the
birthday.
podcast. I don't think
Can
she
you
knows
play?
what a podcast is,
Okay.
but
Can you play this one clip for her?
I'll see what I can do.
Happy birthday,
Here,
Evelyn.
this one right here coming up. Happy birthday, Evelyn. We think you're cool.
We think you're great.
We're so excited you're part of our church. We think God made you to be a really
Amen.
cool
And if you
person.
just,
Amen.
like, need a testimony to how great our children's ministry is, yesterday
I
Evelyn's
would love that.
Sunday school teachers bought donuts and brought them to her Sunday school class in honor of her birthday. So
Do they do that for everyone?
And there you have
I think
it.
they
They
do.
just honor everybody in the class.
So
I love
good
it.
job.
Okay, First Baptist Arlington. Way to
Come
be so
Come
good.
on.
Way
Well
to be
done.
so good.
Okay.
Okay, I know there's a lot to talk about. We didn't even talk about
It's
the
Christmas.
CDC Christmas program.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
adorable.
It's
I've heard.
adorable.
Yeah.
It was so sweet.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
the boys.
What were the
Adler.
boys? Were they? They weren't in the actual nativity play, were they?
No, but they were in the beginning.
They were at the beginning. Yeah.
They were the openers.
Yeah.
They were stars.
Yeah.
They sang a version of Jingle Bells that had the gospel in it.
Yes.
So about
I've heard
Jesus
that.
saving
It's really
us.
good.
And they
I think that's what our
rang these little bells.
preschoolers sang in
I
worship.
did
a few
here at
weeks
church.
ago.
They did.
okay.
They did. Yeah. They
Yeah.
sang
I
that
just hadn't
version of
heard it
Jingle
yet,
Bells.
so I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't. Yeah, it's a Jingle Bell song. They had bells on their hands.
Yeah. Valerie led that here.
and
Yeah.
they shook their little hands, and
Good job,
it was
boys.
great.
Yeah.
And
And girls, but you only have boys.
Yeah.
yeah, great job, boys. We love y'all. Later you can listen to this. We love y'all. You're very cool. Thank you. When you turn 8, I'll play this for you. So okay, I've talked enough about everything
And
good
our
going
little
on
granddaughter
here.
Adler, she was a shepherd.
She did great.
She did. So
She did
what's
great.
funny is since I was in Washington D.C. last week, I wasn't able to go, and so the Friday prior, I was on Thursday. I was taking Adler into the CDC, and Zoe and them said, you can come tomorrow. Tomorrow's a dress rehearsal.
is
If you
sweet.
would like to come,
Yeah.
because you could see Adler. So that's awesome. And so I went and I watched the dress rehearsal. Well, about halfway through the program, Kenny was in there with me because we were working on the lights, trying to get them adjusted. And Adler said, so she was thinking this was the program. And so she
And
said,
it's for,
we've
like,
done all this
you
for
and
2
Kenny?
people. And Thais was like, Adler, this is just rehearsal. So
That's awesome. Well, it was packed. You popped over there, didn't you?
I
thought
wasn't
saw
able to
you.
make it.
Oh, sorry. A lot of the staff came to support, which
Yeah.
is what we want.
Yeah.
But they had to pull out more rows of chairs. Ryan
That's what I
and
heard.
I stood behind my
Yeah.
mom and aunt, and it was.
yeah, Zoe told me
It
they
was
put out
packed.
105 chairs and there were over 200 who came.
Yeah, there was
So
tons.
they
of
finally
standing.
gave up on chairs.
I love
It
the
was
CDC.
sweet. It was awesome. Thais and Zoe got up and did a great welcome. Brad did a welcome. I mean, it was really good. But then they say, hey, if you have young kids in here, I need you to hide when they come on the stage.
Yeah, because
Because they're going to melt down. And then, sure enough, those parents that didn't hide, you saw little meltdowns.
Yeah.
And it was so cute. I mean, nobody,
sweet.
we're not there for the talent. You're just there to love your kids. So, anyway, okay.
it's great.
I'm sorry. I keep
Okay.
dragging us into.
No, it's okay.
Reminiscing.
It's Christmas,
It's Christmas. It's fun.
But we're here to be told more.
at some point, right?
At some point, we'll tell you more.
Tell me more. It is. We're walking through Isaiah.
Yeah.
We're starting to get a little happier. Mm-hmm. We started.
Isaiah. I mean, Isaiah's just a challenging book. I mean, it's massive, and it's fundamental theologically to pretty much every. It's kind of like Exodus. It's you can't do the New Testament really without Isaiah.
Yeah.
Or Exodus, and so.
We talked about that last
so
week.
all we've done is just kind of hit the highlights. I mean, we're not even hitting the highlights. We're just kind of skimming.
It's.
You
could
just a
spend
brief
years
stop. Yeah,
and years
that's
preaching
right,
through
in
it.
Isaiah. So, but yeah, Sunday, Christmas lights from Sunday.
Yeah. Love it. Love it.
A lot of fun.
I heard you give to me, if you're listening to Tell Me More, it brought the full picture to you because you talked about just second Isaiah and the
Right.
controversy around it. And you
Right.
went ahead and taught the people, though, like
Yeah.
what we really, what you.
My view.
But which is, I mean, your
A
theology
unified
shapes
one
our
author
theology.
Isaiah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a single author Isaiah.
Which we talked about
person.
in here, but
Yep.
I thought for those who are listening, you kind of have some background on what that's about and why we talked about it, which I think validates our podcast time.
I'm
so.
okay with prophecy. So
let's talk about it.
how about it?
So, okay, yeah, what do y'all want to talk about from yesterday? There's a lot in the sermon.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Because the Christmas lights, I mean, the idea that we need to
be
shine bright
lights.
for Jesus,
Yeah.
Luke, I'm sure that
Shine for Jesus.
I'm sure that
right.
makes you happy.
I mean, I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to get there.
Okay,
Yeah.
where do you want to start?
I mean, I can geek out on a lot of things.
Luke has
here.
some Post-it notes on his Bible.
Well,
I made post-it
Is this your
notes.
Greek Bible or your Hebrew Bible?
That's my English Bible.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't have that as an option.
it's easier to read.
It is much
The
easier to
English
read.
one is very much easier.
If we want to start by geeking out on the Hebrew, I can do that. You talked about that opening word.
Let's go. Isaiah
Behold.
42. Isaiah 42.
Isaiah 42, verse 1. Yeah.
Behold.
NIV translates it, look.
Look and
my
behold.
servant,
Those
which
yeah.
I'm okay with that, but the old King James, whenever you have that kind of opening, it usually uses the word behold. And I know we don't say that word much anymore.
We don't.
But I like that. Behold.
Yeah.
Something to pause, and that to me is the sense of that. So
It's a really short Hebrew word, and that's saying something because most Hebrew words are 3 letters.
Right. So when it's really short,
It's like a 2-letter word.
I was about to say there's only 2 in this
and
one. Right?
how is it used in Hebrew?
It gets used a few places, but it can mean like look, see, hear. So like one of the more notable usages of this word in my mind happens in 1 Samuel. So if you remember the story of Samuel hearing the voice of God in the night, and then basically says, finally learns to say, here I am, speak Lord, your servant is listening. But every time he goes and says, here I am, it's actually the opening kind of compound phrases from this word here. So it's hineni, the word in Isaiah 42 is hen. So it's hineni, hen. So it can mean hear, look, see. It's this kind of really like
Yeah.
sharp sounds bad because it's not an angry word, but it is this very
Directed,
pointed,
yeah.
direct, kind of abrupt
Right.
phrase.
Kind of a call to attention.
It is,
Check it out.
Which
It's
is
a
why you
stand
get
up
behold
straight.
in the old King
But
James
look,
version. Mhm.
I could see look.
look.
I get it,
Yeah.
but look's
Yeah.
a bit more casual.
But if it's look with an exclamation point.
yeah. But I like behold.
Yeah.
Behold is just a powerful word. What it invites you to, right? It's much
Yeah.
deeper than look.
So when
So
you
yeah.
read this word with an exclamation point.
Right. Which I think is the way to read it. And the fact that you've entered into the shifting genre, if you will, of Isaiah when you get to the 40th chapter, and we're in the 42nd chapter here, you now are also being introduced to this servant. And the word servant has already been used in Isaiah. You know, you find it earlier in the text. And the word shepherd will be used. In fact, Cyrus will actually be called a shepherd. But, this sense of this servant song, trying to introduce that to our people, that was something that captured the imagination of the New Testament theologians, even Jesus, I would say. And so what does it mean? Who is this servant? Is it Israel? That's what some people say. When you look at the kind of Isaiah speaking to his own generation, was it Cyrus, who eventually is going to be the king of Persia? The problem with all that, and I think there's relevance in all of those arenas, I guess, if you want to consider them. But to me, when I read this text, it feels to me like Isaiah is even looking beyond Babylon. That's why I said that yesterday. I think he's actually looking to Bethlehem, without even knowing what it is or where it is. It's beyond the exile. It's something more profound even than that. And so, and I think that's certainly how the New Testament theologians would interpret it, So it's really powerful. And I mean, obviously Isaiah's in a context. I mean, he's Hezekiah's king, and I think sometimes we read all this so quickly we don't pause to think about just what it must have felt like to these people. But to just even if you were living in Judah, you knew that Israel was also the people of God. They were your brothers and sisters, even though you had different kings and there were competing alliances, and sometimes they even had issues with each other militarily, which is quite fascinating. But there was still a sense of kinship with them, and for Assyria to come in and conquer the northern kingdom, I mean, that sent shockwaves across the south, because there's no way Judah could defend itself against Assyria. If Israel couldn't do it, Judah sure couldn't do it.
Right.
Much smaller. And not only that, you have the prize. You've got the crown jewel. You've got the temple. You got all the artifacts. You got all the treasure. And then when Isaiah kind of somewhat confronts Hezekiah and says, who were those people that just came to visit? And Hezekiah says, well, it's the Babylonians were here. And Isaiah says, and what did y'all do? And Hezekiah says, well, I gave them a tour and I showed them the temple. I showed them the treasures. And then Isaiah will go on to say, well, the next time they come, they'll plunder. That's what's going to happen. And sure enough, 100 years later, they do. But then Isaiah sees that vision that God gives him, that there's hope beyond the exile and even a return to Jerusalem, which is exactly what happened. So Ezra and Nehemiah, which we studied a while back, fits into that era, where there's the return. But then also the servant song fits in, because once they return, then they wait, because they're not really sure. Has this been fulfilled? Has it not been fulfilled? Who is this servant? What does this really mean? And it's really going to come to bear next Sunday, in my message next Sunday, because we're going to do Isaiah 53 next Sunday, which is kind of this portrait image that's painted by Isaiah of this suffering servant that the Jews have always struggled with. They're not sure what to do with that page in the Old Testament. And we as Christians interpret it Christologically. But
it's so rich.
We'll unpack that next week. Yeah. But
I look forward to it.
Composite picture of the servant, for example, if you were to try to make Cyrus the servant, the problem is the text. There's just too much. The text is too robust. Even if you want to make Israel the servant, in my opinion, the text is too robust. There's just more going on. Somebody has got to. There's some fulfillment, if you will. And for us as Christians, we would see Jesus as that fulfillment, the Messiah. So, yeah, it's powerful.
I think it's always worth repeating and remembering that the Bible is probably the most masterful work of literature ever.
I believe it is.
Ever.
Miss it. And if I've talked about this in here too, and I always want to be careful. We never try to bash other religions. We don't need to.
No,
Jesus stands on his own. You don't have to.
Yeah.
But if you've read some other religions' holy texts,
right,
it does make the Bible stand out as beautiful and unique and a tapestry written by God, because it's just
the threads
so deep,
that
so
are
beautiful,
weaving here.
And Jesus stands alone, right?
Of course.
But his wisdom, his stories, his fingerprints on just culture, it's just masterful. It's beautiful.
It is. And so to think about a text like Isaiah that, is it Cyrus? Is it Jesus? Is it Israel? Right. Yes.
Exactly.
And it can do that.
Because
it's robust.
It's actually
enough
a big enough vessel, and the way
is.
that prophecy works in the Old Testament. It's this forthtelling versus foretelling. It's both of these things.
Yeah, did a good job.
It actually encompasses all of it, and it's capable of holding all of it, so that it's not this, not that. It's actually, this is looking to
layered
Cyrus.
meaning.
This is looking to Israel. And this is also finding its bigger, grander fulfillment in Jesus. And so one of the things I thought of as I was listening yesterday, and this I think just illustrates this point, is you talked about how in Luke 4, Jesus gets up, reads from the scroll of Isaiah. He reads from Isaiah chapter 61.
Yeah, I think I said 60 yesterday. But hey, who's counting? 61. It's better to say 61, because that's actually where it's from.
It is.
I was on a roll.
Thank God for the podcast.
I was on a roll.
That we can clarify.
You're on a roll.
I was on a roll.
Let it be known.
If you've never preached a sermon before and you get up on that stage, sometimes it's actually hard to remember the exact number.
Right. Yeah.
And you don't want to lose momentum. And
if you've ever seen a Dr. Wiles outline, he's not working off much on that outline. It's all up here.
That's true.
Which is incredible.
It's amazing.
Don't do much of the manuscripting.
And I don't know how to say this respectfully, but I do mean it with the utmost respect. It's incredible, especially for your age. Because the older I get, the more I'm like, every word needs to be written down, or who knows what's going to come out when I get up there. And I'm not yet 40, which is important because I'm 39 now.
And happy birthday last week, by the way.
Yeah. But to think about Isaiah chapter 61. So Jesus gets up in Luke chapter 4. He reads Isaiah chapter 61, which talks about the year of the Lord's favor. Jesus basically gets up and says, "This is me. I am the fulfillment."
Right.
But Isaiah 61 isn't just about Isaiah 61. A lot of scholars actually will talk about how this idea of the year of the Lord's favor is actually pointing all the way back to Leviticus chapter 25 with the year of Jubilee. And so when you see that it's the oppressed who are getting freed, that's where in the Old Testament you have that, Israeli slaves are supposed to be freed.
Yeah, set free.
They're set free. Debts are erased. Yeah. All of these things go away. They're forgiven. And so Jesus isn't just saying, I'm the fulfillment of Isaiah 61. He's actually pointing all the way back to the Jubilee of Jubilees, the year of the Lord's favor, which we don't ever really have a record that they did it
Right.
as the people of God.
But the concept
concept is
powerful,
there.
if you think about it.
And so for
Very
Jesus
powerful.
to say, I'm not just pointing back to this, I'm pointing back to Jubilee, and I'm the fulfillment.
Yeah.
Today, Jubilee's fulfilled in your hearing.
The real one. Yeah.
And it's here.
It's powerful, yeah.
And so to think about the Bible as this just masterful text that all of these themes are weaving together in such a profound way, prophecy is dynamic. So Bible scholars, you hear the two big theological words for the day. We'll talk about how prophecy is both analeptic and proleptic.
Yowza.
So, getting into it. Analeptic or analepsis, if you're using the noun form, is this looking back. So prophecy not only looks forward, it also looks back.
Right.
So Isaiah is not just
Kind of interprets.
someone who comes out of the blue doing nothing,
No context,
from nothing.
yeah.
He is drawing on this rich tapestry of all of the scripture that's come before, all of the prophets who've come before. So that's the analeptic side. It's also proleptic in that it looks forward. And so you can think about this actually plays out in the life of the church. A lot of theologians will talk about how the Lord's Supper is both analeptic and proleptic. It looks back not only to Jesus but also to Passover, but it's also proleptic. It looks forward to the meal we'll have with Jesus one day.
It's a clear example of that.
But the Bible just does this so naturally all the time.
Can we just take a moment, and if you're the Bible and you're listening, actually, if you're God and you're listening, you're cool. You're cool. You stand
Thank you for
stand
giving us
out.
this amazing
This is
book.
really an amazing gift to us, the Bible.
And one of the reasons I think it has endured so powerfully and reliably, there really has never been another ancient text as evaluated and tested as the Scripture. I mean, it just is. It's everybody that can try to disprove it has tried from every angle.
And I do think if you're listening with a skeptical ear, or if your posture is just that way, the Bible has been picked apart.
Oh my goodness, and so authenticated.
As far as a document goes,
It's powerful.
it didn't just show up one day.
No, we have more
Compared to
confidence in the accuracy
everything.
of this text than we do in the Iliad or the
Anything.
I was
Odyssey,
about to say,
Anything.
how
You
would
name
we-
it.
any other ancient
Yes.
document of
Yeah.
any kind.
People study Plato, and you're like, okay, how do you know this is actually Platonic?
And they basically have to say, we don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
We have 5
About to
manuscripts.
say. But this has been so tested and proven to be worthy. And when I think the Dead Sea Scrolls, you think about them, we've talked about this before, but you have these ancient copies of the Hebrew text that date back to AD 900 or 1000, and then they unearth the Dead Sea Scrolls, and you go back 1,000 years without any textual bridge. When you're looking at these ancient texts that are AD 1000 or so, and all of a sudden you uncover one that's 1,000 years earlier without any bridge to it, and you study it, and it's almost exactly what we have in the Masoretic text. I mean, it's just that's miraculous to me. It's just the preservation of this text, and it can hold up, And this is a great example of it. You're right, Luke. These threads that are found in the Scripture that find fulfillment and still wait to be fulfilled, or they're still yet to be ultimately fulfilled. Because you think about it. If you're in the exile, and then you're familiar with the preaching of Isaiah, and eventually you return back to Jerusalem, and there's this great revival, and you have guys like Ezra who get up and read this material to you. They help interpret the law, but the prophets were part of it as well. There's great celebration, but yet when you hear some of these texts, you think, okay, all right, Cyrus, the king of Persia, did let us go. But he doesn't provide the teaching that brings righteousness to all the nations of the world. That hasn't happened.
Yeah, I think I've heard you talk before about how prophecy is like staring at a mountain range.
Yeah.
And so in your first viewing, you see those initial shorter mountains, and you can't see the bigger mountains beyond them.
Right.
So
But once you get to them,
if you're a Jew living in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, you've seen that first
absolutely, and you rejoice.
First mountain, and you rejoice.
Yeah.
But you can't see the mountain beyond it yet. But you go.
Yeah.
It's like when you are driving through Kansas and eastern Colorado.
Yeah,
and
when
you're
you're
I
driving
can see
through
the
Kansas.
Rockies in the distance.
Yeah. But,
And then you
And then you finally see the Rockies.
That's right. And so, and to me, that's the beauty of a book like Isaiah. Here is this fulfillment, and Israel experiences God's blessing and all of that, but there's still something lacking, and they know it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you get this, when you study the intertestamental period, there's all this fervor around messianic hopes. It's almost like they couldn't help themselves because they're watching the world unfold all around them and all these powers arise. And they keep trying to establish their independence in Israel. And they keep trying to somehow make a statement that, hey, we're still in this story. You know, we're not Rome. We get it. You know, we're not Greece. We get it. But we have a role to play. And they keep thinking, well, somebody's going to, well, the Messiah's coming. And so you get that, one theologian put it like this. He said in the first century, it's his sense that rabbis would, when they're teaching, they would say, well, this is our reality when the Messiah comes. You know, well, this is what we're dealing with right now. But when the Messiah comes, so there was just that sense. And so for Jesus to step into that moment and start weaving together the picture of who he was, taking these threads from prophecies like Isaiah, it's very powerful. And it was somewhat disturbing for some of those rabbis, not all of them. I mean, the scripture tells us a lot of them converted to Christ, particularly in the book of Acts. We read where these priests and rabbis and teachers act, because sometimes we look at it and go, man, the Jews just totally rejected the Messiah. Yeah. Well, that's not true.
The first Jesus followers were all Jewish.
They were all Jews. So, I mean, come on, y'all. So, as a matter of fact, they had a hard time letting us in, if you remember.
They did.
Yeah, if you've read the rest of it.
We took about 10 chapters in Acts.
Yeah.
We were the outsiders, actually. So, but, some of them had a hard time because they had also added their own kind of sense of who they thought this person would be. So the expectations were layered with biblical imagery, but also the imagery of their day. It's like they couldn't help themselves when they see these Roman generals come marching in, and all this exertion of power, and they're watching it, and they're thinking, well, you just wait until our general comes in. You just wait. It's going to be really different. And so when he arrives on a donkey, and he comes teaching and using spiritual power and wisdom, and yet he connects himself to all these prophecies. Well, it was a little alarming for some of them, but not all of them. Some of them said, yes, this must be the one. And so I love all that. I love how the scripture can just withstand all of it. In this passage that we looked at Sunday, Isaiah 42, it's so beautiful to me, just in the way it does, I think, depict the kind of Messiah Jesus represented. Not shouting in the streets, not just running roughshod over humanity, not getting to some position of power from an earthly perspective.
Can we talk about this? So yesterday you talked about how, if you're God and you want to change the world,
how would you do it?
Put someone in Rome,
right?
Get a king, an army, and God doesn't do any of that, which I think we're familiar with that part of the story. But so as Christians, I think, who also possess this desire to change the world,
right? We face the very same tension.
How do we do it?
Right.
And how do we navigate those tensions?
Don't you think coercion and individual nationalism across all the countries of the world is the way to do it? That's you would think we will have learned. We just have a hard time learning, because there's something about the exertion of earthly power that enamors all of us. One of the disturbing things I remember reading years ago, Michael Lindsay, he's written this book called Faith in the Halls of Power. And he used to work for Gallup. He's a sociologist, taught at Rice. He was president of Gordon. He's now left there. He's president of some other where is he now? I can't remember. He's president of another university. But anyway, we had Michael come do one of our staff retreats here at our church. But in his research, Faith in the Halls of Power, he outlines or he isolates these various what he calls halls of power, like the academy or the government or entertainment or the business sector.
Right.
And just how in his research he had discovered all of these really strong evangelical Christians who were in all these halls of power, exerting influence from his perspective in the right way. They were not coercing people. They weren't enamored with it all. They were just living faithfully. That whole idea of faithful presence. Anyway, So he said, in his research, he was interviewing a group of leaders in Washington, D.C.
At Taylor University.
Okay, he's at Taylor University.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I couldn't. Yeah, it was my fault.
Well, so
a little school in the middle of Indiana.
Yeah, he said that in his research, what was fascinating was when he interviewed these political leaders in Washington, D.C., he would ask them about evangelical Christians who were outsiders who would come in to visit. And some of these political leaders said, oh, we love it when they come. They're the easiest ones to manipulate. They're the easiest ones to somehow lead down a path because they're so enamored by all of this. Now, not the evangelical Christians that he was interviewing that lived in D.C. and were working in that halls of power. He's talking about the ones who had come from outside. And he said, and Michael's take on that was, you would think of all people, we would be the least impressed with that political power that's in Washington, D.C. And we're the ones that are the most impressed, which is very disappointing. Mm-hmm. However, his book documented the ones, many of them who live there are not enamored with it because they've been there long enough to see how fleeting it is and how it doesn't accomplish things. So I know that we've had a conversation in the past about Chuck Colson, who was in the White House with Richard Nixon, and his office was in the West Wing. He was adjacent to the Oval Office. He was an attorney, brilliant man, mastermind of so much of what Nixon did, but he was also a hatchet man for Richard Nixon. So he ended up getting in trouble at Watergate, got convicted of federal crime, went to prison. Well, while he was in prison, he gets converted to Christ. And so then he begins this International Prison Fellowship, which is one of the most powerful expressions to me of the gospel and justice that we've ever seen. So many people have been changed by it. But anyway, Colson's dead now, but he was an incredible intellect. But I saw Colson interviewed one day, and they just said something to him about what an incredible life you've lived. You had an office next door to the president of the United States, and then you went to prison. And they said, how did that feel going from being a person of such influence to being a prisoner? And he said, what's fascinating? He said, I was in the White House for a number of years, office next to President Nixon. He said, right now, I could not name one thing to you that we did that I really believe changed people's lives. And I was in the most powerful office in the world. He said, but I can point you to countless expressions of changed lives through the prison ministry that I started in my brokenness. And he said, so it turns out I really wasn't in a position of influence until I was a broken person truly in need of transformation and help. And then I found myself the most influential I've ever been. And I thought, what a fascinating take on power. Yeah. And Jesus knew that. And I think Isaiah prophesies that. He's not going to come breaking broken reeds further. He's not going to, snuff out these smoldering wicks. He's going to have enough nuance to handle the marginalized in the society and yet still bring a message that captivates everybody. And he's going to do it in a very, very meaningful way with a different kind of kingdom, which is exactly what Jesus did.
Yeah, and that's what Luke 4 is about. And then when Paul writes in Philippians 2 that for Christians, really, the way up is actually down.
Right, which is fascinating, isn't it? And you would think, we've learned that lesson. It's one of the things I love to do when we take our trip to Rome. When Mussolini was trying to clean out, Mussolini saw himself as like a new emperor, if you will. And he loved those stories of all these generals coming into Rome and, bringing all their, the plunder and all the people they'd captured. But Rome at that time was just so built upon itself. And there were just so many ancient parts of Rome. And so he decided to just build this massive road right in the middle of it, the Via Imperiale, it's called. And so in order to do that, he just bludgeons the Roman forums, and makes this massive road they can have all of his parades on and all that. But in the doing of it, they decided to unearth all these ruins, because they were covered. They were the years and years and years of dirt and everything else. You had sheep living there and all that kind of stuff, farmers farming in the Roman ruins. So they finally dig it all out, and you have what we have today. But I love to take our tour team. We go up to the very top of the Roman Forum where the Arch of Titus is, and you can look down and just see it all. And we have these books that, you can kind of overlay what it looks like right now and show you what it used to look like, these massive buildings and all the marble and incredible examples of architecture, the Roman arches and the Corinthian columns and, whatever. But then I always like to show everybody that and then just ask everybody to stand and look at it and say, had you told, pick a Roman emperor, that one day this is what it would look like. they would have laughed in your face, because Rome was forever. It was always going to be the seat of power. It was always going to be the dominant force in the world. It was always going to be the capital of intelligentsia, government, military, and now look at it. It's in ruin. And
not even the most influential city in Europe.
Exactly. And so, however, the church has literally taken over the world. And I mean that in the right sense. In other words, the church has actually made its way across the world, not the Roman Empire. And so I always like to say it's power, because Paul says the power is in the gospel. He says, I'm not ashamed of it, because that's the power of God. And we read that passage in Romans.
But if we look globally at where the church is powerful right now, in the right way.
Yes.
It's actually in the places where it has the least positional cultural power and authority.
It's like underground in Iran.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think Iran's one of the fastest growing places for Christianity in the world right now.
So if you want to influence cultures for Christ.
Right. So why would we be shocked?
The way up is down.
Yeah. So it's really, that's what I love about, reading these ancient texts and listening to the voice of Isaiah. And, what all did Isaiah know? Well, I don't know. I know he kept writing, though. Mm-hmm. He just kept writing, and he kept seeing, and he was faithful, to keep writing and keep seeing and keep preaching.
Yeah, keep an ear to God.
Yes. Right. And even though he's watching, I feel like Isaiah was sharp enough to know he was in a transitional period of history, and he's already seen Israel crumble. And his sense is, based upon the visions that the Lord gives him, it's going to happen to Judah as well. And so what must that have felt like for him as a prophet to see all of that, and yet at the same time to have the encouragement that God's story wasn't going to end with a Babylonian conquest. There's a story beyond it. There's a promise that's going to last beyond it. And he keeps writing about it. And that's what I just have so much respect for Isaiah. I always have. It's always been hard for me. I'll be honest with you. I haven't preached a lot out of Isaiah just through the years. It's a dense, long book, and I almost feel like I can't ever do it justice.
Can't get your arms around it.
Yeah, so it's been hard for me. And so I'm going to tackle it one day a little more definitively than I have. But right now,
we look forward to it.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just touching on it right now.
We look forward to it.
And also the whole idea of light, that you find that throughout Isaiah, this contrast of light and dark, and I think that does speak powerfully to our culture, and particularly this season of the year. Last night when we finished Adventure, we went and got something to eat, and we went to Hannah's house and our family, and we just walked the interlocking lights. Well, we had our little guys with us, and eventually we just put them in the back of Cindy's pickup. It's funny, I've talked to the police officer right in front of Hannah's house. I said, look, I'm going to load all these grandkids out in the back of this truck. And he was like, whatever, look, you can only go 2 miles an hour. Yeah. He started laughing. He said, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Because I was thinking, okay, he's standing right there. We're about to load up Gideon,
you might as well just acknowledge it, right?
Adler, in the back of a pickup. And so anyway, so we're singing Christmas carols, And I mean, the little guys are it's just house after house of just crazy lights, in all kinds of configurations. And they were it's like they were just mesmerized by it all, because you're riding in the dark, and yet it's just lit up everywhere of everything you can think of, and I just thought, light is powerful, and it just really, it's attractional. It has a certain draw to it. So we left there, and our niece and nephew are visiting with us right now, and I said, I almost felt like I was in, y'all know that scene in Elf when Elf is taking Jody to see the Christmas trees, and she goes, oh, you hadn't seen a Christmas tree, because he's not seen the Rockefeller tree. And then she takes him that is a Christmas tree. So I said, we got to go to the Coolist's house. If you think that
oh my goodness,
you got to go see this.
Interlochen School. Have you been to David Coolitz's house?
Yeah. So we get in the car and we're driving, and when we top the hill.
So you buckled the kids in for that one?
Well, that one was just Ruby and Griffin, so it was me and Cindy. And so, we topped the hill, and you could see them, how David throws them up at the very top of those trees. Yep. And Griffin, who's my freshman in college nephew, saw that and he went, "Whoa, is this where we're going?" And I was
That's
like,
the family response.
Yes, yeah, whoa. I said, yeah.
Wow.
So we kind of topped that hill, started going down, and they both are just like, "Oh my goodness, are you kidding me?"
All right, Peggy and David.
Oh yeah. So we had to roll the windows down.
Ruby and Griffin approved.
And just sit. That they wanted
have
to
a Griffin.
just sit.
Well, their
They
grandson's name is Griffin.
All right.
Speaking of.
So we just sat at the corner to try to just take it all in because there's just so much of it. Had my sunroof open so you can, if you want to see, you're riding under a canopy. It's just. And for those of you who hadn't done it yet, you need to go see it. It's the brightest thing in Dow Worthington Gardens.
Oh, they'd love for you to.
And but
it's
anyway,
all done in honor of David's mom.
Yeah.
Well, I say it all is. I think it went to a next level.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so again, I've got these two young adults in my back seat of my car, both going, "Oh my goodness,
cool.
how long does this, who does, I mean, that's the conversation in the back seat." And these are two, a
sharp.
senior in college.
And they've seen the world.
Yes,
I
was going to say, they live in Nashville,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, their dad is the CEO of a massive record company. So it's not like you're going to just
they've seen
impress
stuff.
them. But I just love Griffin's initial response just when we topped that hill. Whoa, is that where we're going? Yes, that's where we're going. But just the power of light to me, it's awesome and necessary. And so I love that imagery that we get this promise in Isaiah 42 for us. It's a light to the Gentiles. And I think that sometimes we don't pause and take that in, that we actually get in on this too. It's not ours.
Well, and it's not some idea that God just comes up with an axe.
That's right. Yeah.
It's throughout the entirety of Scripture.
Once again, the density of the text, the robust nature of the prophecy, and the ultimate fulfillment of it. And it is still happening today. I mean, just the need for light in this world is so powerful. So so it's fun. I'm loving it all, and it fits into the all the Christmas lights.
Yeah, the whole narrative and the way you've kind of built.
It's good.
Advent is so cool, and then the star of the show, Jesus, who it's pointing to, is just the best. And it's just incredible. It's just an incredible story that we get to be a part of.
And it's funny. Yesterday afternoon, we're doing the Christmas story for the little kids, and so we have Ada was helping me and Cindy, and so Ada leads all the little children in all the motions that we do. So when I'm telling the story, and Ada kind of gives everybody the instructions, when Poppy says Mary, put your hands together like you're praying, and put your head down, but then Ada said, but the star of the show is Jesus, baby Jesus, and so they have this little cradle, arms rocking Jesus. But I loved how even in Ada's little 10-year-old brain, it was like, well, we got Mary, we got Joseph, got the wise men, but the star of the show is Jesus,
Jesus.
That never changes. So anyway.
I love it.
Cool.
Okay.
Much to talk about.
We could probably keep going, but this is turning into a longer episode.
Okay, here we go. We're done.
Next week.
Next week.
Thank y'all. Thanks for listening to the Tell Me More podcast today. You can subscribe to this podcast on your app of choice, or you can visit us at fbca.org to find out more information about the podcast and our church. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.